The 2025 NFL Draft starts tonight, and what does the latest insider buzz say may unfold as the Dolphins wait to make their pick at 13 and beyond? We got you here today, Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack. And for one more week, the NFL Draft lead for the 33rd team. I want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it. We live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions do apply. Welcome to one of the shortest shelf life shows of the year. I love doing a draft morning because I did my predicted mock draft last night. I recorded that at 11 p.m. last night for Locked On NFL Scouting, posted it on the 33rd team. Obviously, have done all the big board stuff that finalized this week. Did an extra 7-round mock draft simulation over on Touchdown Miami on Substack. Went through 3 separate simulations with some custom settings that I put into a simulator. I don't want to say the hay's in the barn, right? But like the lifting's done. And now it's just, what do the people that have the connections at the big insider spots, like what do they have to say? How is it trending? What's real? What's not? And there's some really fascinating stuff that's unfolding through a lot of the big mock draft projections from names like Albert Breer from SI, The Athletic. Mine last night had this as well. I'd heard some of the same things, and I'm not going to put myself in the boat of insiders as Albert Breer and Dane Brugler. Dane's the GOAT as far as I'm concerned of guys from my generation doing draft stuff. And I got a great deal of admiration for the work that he does, but I've been in the space long enough that like I know some people, right? And that's the blessing that I feel like I have with doing the stuff I do with NFL draft coverage. So what's happening this morning? What is the expectations that are shifting? The big one that started yesterday, and it just got more and more and more and more prevalent throughout the course of the last probably 18 hours. Kelvin Banks trending like he's going to be a top 6 pick. And maybe it's a smokescreen, but I heard coming into the week, Kelvin Banks is going to go earlier than you think. Of course, the Dolphins tied to Kelvin Banks. He was often mocked there, and it became the widely popular fit and pairing to put with the Dolphins and say the floor is at 13. Well, now, like between Vic Tafur of The Athletic and some of the NFL Network mock drafts, and Joe Marino had it with Locked On NFL Scouting and the names that I mentioned earlier, Kelvin Banks is going 6 to the Raiders. And some of this might be, and these are the mock drafts, I'm not saying that is unequivocally going to be the pick, but that is where the momentum is for this pick to happen. Is it buzz for the Jags to try to get somebody to trade up to 5 and get in front of the, like, I don't know. That's the fun part about it. But if that does indeed hold, what that ends up happening is the domino effect of, okay, well, Armand Membu was going to be the pick at 6 if the Jags or the Bears were taking Genty at 5. And now where does Membu go? Does Membu push the Jets off of a tight end? And then if that happens, where do the tight ends happen? And we're going to talk about with the trade-up teams in just a little bit on the show, the tight end domino might be one that benefits the Dolphins directly with some of what they are trying to achieve, depending on who's on the board. So Kelvin Banks, you heard coming in, he's going to go earlier than you think. And now every predictive mock draft from every well-plugged-in insider in the last 18 hours has Kelvin Banks going 6 to the Raiders. Now, that domino effect for the Dolphins obviously is what do the Saints do at 9? They have an offensive line need. They declined the 5th-year option on Trevor Penning. Is this shift to Banks for the Raiders more about Colton Miller? Does that make Colton Miller available in the backdrop of all of these offensive tackles? And what does that do for the tackle market? And how could that trickle down to Miami? That impacts the 49ers with their pick at 11, where they've got Trent Williams, who's one of the best offensive linemen in the game, but he's like 37 years old. So there's teams in between 6 and 13 where if the domino effect is, and I know some mocks had Membu not going until 13. I believe Todd McShay had the Dolphins taking Membu in his mock. Now, I would be surprised. My expectation is the Jets would then pivot and just take Armand Membu at 7 because they took Olu Fashanu last year at right tackle. And now you have Membu potentially to lock in as or Fashanu at left tackle, and then potentially Membu to just pair with them and automatically with Justin Fields in the run game and physical guys that are prototypes. Makes a lot of sense. But then if the Bears don't come up and the Jaguars take Genty, and what you then have is the Bears potentially taking Tyler Warren. And then, who's the other tight end team? Is it the Colts? Is it somebody else in that stratosphere? And if it's the Colts, for Miami's purposes, who makes it? Does Mason Graham slide? If Mason Graham doesn't slide, then, are they entertaining trade back options? I know for a fact that's something the Dolphins are really aspiring to achieve, is to add even more draft capital to their pool of talent this year, whether that comes via Jalen Ramsey or number 10 or a trade back from 13, like however that looks. I know that's a prerogative, and that's something that is aspiring because of where the team is at, and the nature of this offseason is kind of like a foundational year for the next cycle with this nucleus of talent. And of course, there's a long-term risk that's associated there, because what happens if those who are in charge don't remain in charge? But everything that they have done has indicated that, more draft capital is a piece that is going to be important, because they are looking to add the young players to the mix. And it's a great year to have a bunch of picks where the Dolphins don't have a bunch of picks. So there's 3 teams that have been hotly rumored the last 18 hours or so to be teams looking to move up in the 2025 NFL draft. Teams in the 20s even. And Miami could potentially be in play for all 3. We're going to explore who they are, what the trade packages and draft picks might look like that those teams have, as we just kind of take one last look around the landscape, enjoy it for a few hours, and then chaos starts tonight. So that's next. Make sure you guys stick with us. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where the heck did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment all at your fingertips, it's easy to lose track these days. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO gives you full visibility and control over all of your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center, so you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So you can stop managing your money and actually start building wealth. When you start using Monarch, it might help you realize just how much each week or every month you're dropping into that 2-door delivery service, and help you budget smarter and save even more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off of your first year. It is playoff time in South Florida between the Heat, the Panthers. There's nothing that beats the atmosphere of a playoff game. Every bucket, every stop, every goal, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you could be a part of it without the stress of buying last-minute tickets and hunting for prices. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when the demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%, but not just on sports. There's concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And they're all in pricing that you can toggle on. It means there's no surprise fees when you put the tickets into your card and go to checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets with lowest prices guaranteed. There are 3 teams in the 20s that have been reported this week to be the teams that are kind of sniffing around the opportunity to come up in the draft order. And that's an important part of the question, because it's very easy for us to say, well, Kelvin Banks is gone, domino effect, somebody might get pushed down, trade back. You're going to have even more players you like on the board, right? But it's not just as simple as trade back, because you need to know who's trying to come up. The first team is Denver at 20. And I kind of get the impression that they like this running back class. I think the nature in which Denver comes up probably is not a overly realistic scenario for the Dolphins, where they would probably be looking to come up for Ashton Genty. But Genty is being flirted with potentially going at 5 with Jacksonville, or trading with Chicago, with the Bears coming up from 10. But if he doesn't go at 5 and Chicago stays at 10, like, that's kind of the expected chalk pick there if he makes it to the Bears at 10. If he gets past that point, you got San Francisco and Dallas before Miami. Pretty long shot for Genty. But if the Broncos have eyes on other players, if the Broncos have eyes on Colston Loveland, that's going to be a name that's very common to invoke in this section of the show, because I think there's another team that's been reported to not only be interested in Colston Loveland, but interested potentially moving up, and showed they were willing to have those conversations last year with a different tight end. But if the Broncos, if they're looking for Sean Payton's joker, and they've done a really good smoke screen with running backs, and they have everybody believing that they're in backs, but they're really in like a long-term piece, and they don't want to pay Evan Ingram long-term, who's there on a 1-year deal that he signed this year, Colston Loveland could be an option for Miami to go back to 13. And from a trade value chart perspective, you're probably looking at getting 51 back, but have to send an early day 3 back as a part of the package. Okay, I love the idea of getting 48 and 51 and going back from 13 to 20 and avoiding having to slide back too far in the queue. But you're not adding any extra picks, right? And that's part of the puzzle. But I do think you have more picks in the right range of the draft. Likelihood there, I would say, is pretty low. But it is an acknowledgement to make that if Broncos have intentions on a flex receiver who could play tight end, big body player instead of running backs, as they've kind of postured or tried not to posture, that could be in play because of the domino effect of if Kelvin Banks goes 6, let's say Ashton Genty goes 5, Kelvin Banks goes 6, and then the Jets pivot to Armand Membu at 7. Where's Tyler Warren go? Like, you might see a world in that situation where Tyler Warren and and Colston Loveland are both on the board when Miami picks at 13. And now you're really putting the feet to the fire to any team that's looking for a flex weapon to come up. That's also the case with the Rams. And I think this is a team, and obviously there's been history with these two teams in doing deals, and so much so that Les Snead and Sean McVay said earlier this week they've had conversations with the Dolphins about Jalen Ramsey. So that's where this one gets interesting for me. The Rams last year tried to come up and get Brock Bowers. They didn't have the ammo to get it done. But they really wanted that mismatched tight end receiving weapon, right? And now the Rams have moved on from Cooper Kupp. Colston Loveland is a blur the lines between a tight end and wide receiver, and physical, and the things that he can do and how he can help you in the run game and how they use their tight ends as guys on the edge. Makes a lot of sense. And it's been reported that they are interested in potentially going up and getting Colston Loveland as a potential trade-up candidate team. So you should be rooting for the scenarios that put Loveland and potentially Tyler Warren, because Indy at 14 is such a popular tight end spot in mocks. You should be hoping both those guys get on the board. Or maybe you're just hoping to see Colston Loveland there, and then there's the urgency of, hey, it's you're going to run out. This is it. This is last call. Because if that's the case, the Rams, who pick at 26, have a pick that's valued about 450 less points on the trade value chart than what the Dolphins pick at 13 is. And what if Jalen Ramsey hypothetically becomes a piece of this package, right? Like, and this is all hypothetical, and I'm as tired of talking about hypotheticals as you guys are of listening to hypotheticals, right? But that's the nature of this time of year. And then tonight, after the pick is made and the first round wraps, we're going to talk about the Dolphins pick at 13 or wherever they pick. And if they make a trade, we'll probably do 2 separate shows, one on the trade, one on the player, and talk about everything that unfolds, and we'll have tangible things to talk about, right? But what if Jalen Ramsey's a piece of this puzzle back, and the Rams come up and they say, hey, we're going to lose out on some day 2 draft capital, but we're getting Jalen Ramsey back as a part of the deal to go up to 13. If it's Ramsey and 13, this is the hard pill to swallow with where the Rams are at, though. They don't have a 2. They do not have a second round pick. They do have 2 3s. They have 90 and 101. If you took 90, 101, and 26, you're still about 250 points or so on the trade value chart away from being equal to what the Dolphins pick at just 13 is before you include Jalen Ramsey in the package. That's equal to the 68th pick in an NFL draft, so an early 3. But usually, if you trade for future picks, those picks are devalued because you can't cash in right now. So the last thing I'll say about the Rams is this: would you take 26, a 2026 2, 90 and 101 for 13 and Jalen Ramsey if the team is intent on moving Jalen Ramsey and Jalen Ramsey doesn't want to be here? I can think of a whole lot worse, because if you get 90, if this trade were something like this, and I'm not saying any intel here, this is me just looking at the trade value chart, knowing the Rams are interested in Colston Loveland, knowing the Dolphins would like to get more picks in kind of the sweet spot of the draft, right? Those are the things that I can tangibly tell you I know. But if a deal like that were to happen, and the Dolphins now have 26, 48, 90, 98, 101, 116, you can package some of that late third round stuff. You 3 picks between 90 and 101. You got 3 picks in an 11 pick stretch, all in the third round. You could take one of those in 116 or one of those in 135, or 2 of those together, and you could probably get up into the early third round. I wouldn't mind seeing it. And I know there's going to be players at 26 that they have their eyes on that I have really liked in this process, whether it's an interior offensive lineman or an interior defensive lineman or a safety, or Malachi Starks might be there in front of Baltimore. Like, who knows? The other team is Houston. Now, I think what's tricky for Houston is Houston reportedly has their eyes on offensive linemen. If they're going to come up, they're going to come up for offensive linemen. I've heard they really would like to get Kelvin Banks, but we just got done talking about how Kelvin Banks is trending to be a top 6 pick. Is there anybody else that they're interested in to go up and get your guy? If the answer is yes, Houston has 58, 79, and 89. And it's 1 spot in front of the Rams. So you're probably looking at, 58 and 25 is worth 1040. That's still about 100 points short of the 13th pick. And they don't have a 4. So it gets like Miami would probably have to send something back, but they could send 2 and get 3 back. And one of those would be 58. If the right offensive lineman was there, and if the Dolphins didn't have somebody who fell into their lap that they absolutely had to have, and if the Texans thought they needed a sense of urgency because, say it's Gray Zabel, just hypothetically, let's say it's Gray Zabel, offensive lineman from North Dakota State. The Colts lost both Ryan Kelly and Will Fries in free agency this year, and they have Tanner Bordellini from last year as a young player, but they have a vacancy in the offensive interior. And they've been mocked as a tight end spot, but that needed offensive line with how prominent the offensive lead line investments have been with Chris Ballard. If the Texans really like Gray Zabel, that could be the selling point. Hey, you got to come up and get in front of the Colts because they might take Gray Zabel. And Gray Zabel certainly not getting past between Cincinnati and Seattle at 17 and 18. Like if that's a player that Houston really decides they want based on how the board falls, I don't see too many options. Like you've got Colts at 14, Bengals at 17, Seahawks at 18. You got 3 teams in a 5-pick stretch that could and arguably would take it. Those are the teams. Those are the 3 teams in the 20s that have been reported to be interested in trading up with a certain position in mind and how the Dolphins can be a part of those conversations. But it's very dependent on how the board drops. And that includes Miami and their interest to move out. They might have somebody that they got to have. We're going to have some final things I think to remember here today on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. As a small business owner, your work does not end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means it's time to hire. You need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Post your job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip: add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. It's no wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. It's funny. I always do this. I said, short shelf life show, Kyle. You're going to be live on the air on Locked On NFL Scouting YouTube channel with Joe Marino for the entirety of the first round tonight. Maybe keep it a quick 22 minutes. In and out. Kind of work through the hypotheticals. Work through the latest buzz. Get in, get out. Enjoy the rest of your morning. Go take a nap. You got to be charged up. And after the first round ends, we're going to do a whole bunch of content. I got a day 2 mock for the 33rd team that's going to go up on the site tonight. After the first round is done, I got to do my Dolphins recap with if they make a trade. I'm going to recap the trade. If they pick a player, I'm going to recap the player. If they stick and pick at 13, I just got to recap. So I potentially have a doubleheader of shows. And then you got to restack your board, right? Get ready for Friday. So it's the most wonderful time of the year, but I told myself I was going to be in and out in 22 minutes, and here we are, and it's 22 and a half minutes in, and I haven't started segment 3 yet. Always, without fail. So a couple things to think. Things I think. I think this is the most broad scope of options for the Dolphins that I can remember in a really long time, with names that I would be very comfortable with, names that I would be excited about being the pick for the Dolphins. And that's, for me, like, normally draft night's a big high anxiety. I'm not excited. I don't have anxiety. I'm excited. Because as I look at this draft board for the Dolphins, if you told me that they take Jahdae Barron, I'm going to be pumped. If you told me they take Mason Graham, I'm going to be pumped. If you tell me they take Tyler Warren, I'm going to be pumped. You could tell me they take Ashton Genty or Malachi Starks, or if Armand Membu falls, or if Kenneth Grant's there, or they go with Nick Emanori in a trade down scenario, or they take Josh Simmons. I'm going to talk myself into being comfortable with the medicals because of how good the player is. And the same goes for Will Johnson. Like, and if they move down and they end up landing somebody in that next tier with extra picks, I might be more excited about those combinations of possibilities than I am with the ones that stick a pick at 13. So please do not marry yourself to a single outcome in the draft. If you're going to define the success and failure of what the Dolphins draft class looks like based off of who they don't pick at 13, in this class of all classes, I really feel like you're missing an opportunity to kind of be excited for how it splinters off the first flag planted in the ground. And that's it for me is and even if it's Walter Nolan, like I know Walter Nolan was on that list of like guys I'd be meh about, but he's a penetration disruptive style defender who he's a talented player. It's more of the question of, do you have the right group to keep him lit and keep him running hot? But it's not about talent. Gray Zabel. I know that's a name that they like. I watched them work with him firsthand at the Senior Bowl. And seeing him in person, like I think that's a very high floor player that's an upgrade for 1,200 snaps. And with the ability theoretically to play all 5 spots on the offensive line. He snapped, he played guard, and he got some tackle work at the Senior Bowl, and he played tackle at NDSU. Like, I'm not going to be mad. Now, you can get into the economics of it, and you can nitpick, and you could say, hey, was there a more high impact position that exists that you could have gone a different direction that I would have liked the player and potentially liked the player more? Yeah, I think that's a very real world of possibility. But if you tell me you firmly upgrade a spot that's hopefully going to play 1,200 snaps for you, with how much room there is for improvement at that spot, I'm not going to be mad about it. I just can't get mad about it. And that's what was so funny about the doing the Charles Harris Memorial Award this year was, Kyle, it's such a popular question. You get to mid-March and I get asked every year, who's the Harris this year? Like, I kind of don't have one for the first round. And for a pick at 13, with how important the pick is to helping the roster, like, man, that's a really great place to be. So that's the thing to remember. The thing I think you're going to have a really difficult time if you're the Dolphins. And you guys are going to cringe because we're all dealing with PTSD of being Dolphins fans, and I get it. I think they're going to have a really hard time getting me to be, like, tangibly upset with how things work out tonight. And I look forward to breaking it all down for you when it happens. You can keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. I'll be live tonight on the YouTube channel over at Locked On NFL Scouting. We hope to see you over there for our live reactions as the first night unfolds. Kyle Krabs, hope to talk to you all soon. Go Fins.